on one of my new spring patterns for simplicity, pattern 8084, which is this amazing maxi shirt dress, and it also comes with a short knee-length version that has a curved hem. Now, if you're new to sewing or you just need a refresher course, I suggest that you visit the Sewing Basics video linked in the description box below. In that video, I cover all of the basic tools that you need, how to read your pattern, how to read and understand what size you should cut, how to cut out your paper pattern, how to lay your pattern pieces onto your fabric, how to cut out your fabric, and how to read some of the information that is written on your tissue paper. All of these things and a whole lot more are covered in that video. So like I said, if you're new or you just need a refresher, head over and watch that video and then come follow along with me. Now remember, the back of the envelope tells you exactly how much fabric you're going to need, what your fabric options are, and then, for example, how many buttons you need, and that you need a bias binding for the casing. So make sure that you read the back of the envelope. Now I have already cut out all of my pieces, so I just want to go over all of the pieces that you're going to need to make sure that you have everything. Now I'm going to be making the short version for this tutorial, but if you're making the maxi length version, nothing changes except that you're going to be cutting the full length pattern piece for pattern piece 1 and pattern piece 5, which of course are much longer. If you're doing the short version like I am, then you're going to be cutting around the curved edge that you'll see on your pattern. Now don't forget that pattern piece 1 and 5 also have extension pieces because the maxi is rather long, and so you're going to notice a pattern piece that looks like this that says 1A. You're going to place this over the top of pattern piece 1, matching up these dots that you see here, and just tape it together to make one full pattern piece. Now let's go over all of the pieces that you need. You should have cut out 2 of pattern piece number 9, which is the sleeve. You're going to cut out 4 of pattern piece number 6, and this is our pocket. You're going to cut out 2 of pattern piece number A, and you're going to interface one of them. You're going to cut out 4 of pattern piece number 10, and you're going to interface 2 of them. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 4, which is our left placket. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 2, which is our right placket. Pattern piece number 7, you're only cutting 1 of these. This is our yoke. You're going to be cutting out pattern piece number 5. If you're doing the long version, this piece is much longer and does not have a curved hem. You're going to be cutting this on the fold. You're also going to be cutting out pattern piece number 1, which is the front. And again, if you're doing the maxi version, this is a much longer piece, and don't forget to tape up the extension. So 1 should be attached to 1A. Then you're going to cut out 2 of pattern piece number 11, which is our drawstring. And then the final 2 pieces, you're not cutting out of fabric, you're cutting pattern piece number 3 out of interfacing, and this interfacing is going to be placed on your right placket where it says interface. And then this pattern piece here, pattern piece number 12, this pattern piece is our button guide, and you're going to lay this over the top to mark where your buttonholes are going to go. Once you have everything cut out of fabric and interfaced, we're ready to start sewing. Okay, we're going to start with our 2 front pieces. At the shoulder, we're going to create some gathering stitches, so use the longest stitch you have available on your machine. Back stitch at the beginning, but not at the end, between your notches. And then create a second line. Once you have 2 rows about 1/4 inch apart from each other of gathering stitches, go ahead and do the same thing for the second shoulder. Once you have both shoulders gathered, the next step is to make your buttonholes. So you should have marked and interfaced where your buttonhole is going to be for our casing. I've already done mine. You're going to need to follow your manufacturer's instructions on how to make your buttonholes for your sewing machine because they're all different. So look up your sewing manual for your machine and see how you need to make your buttonholes. I've already done both of mine. So the next thing to do is to grab your back piece Here's your back yoke, and I want you to do some stay stitching around the neckline. And then the second thing you're going to do is you're going to grab your back piece and you're going to create gathering stitches between your notches the same way that we did for our shoulders. Once you do that, we'll attach our yoke to our back and front pieces. Okay, I've taken my back yoke and I have pinned it to my back and adjusted my gathers to make it fit. And now we're going to stitch this down. So just adjust your gathers so that they're even all the way across. Pin at your notches, and using a normal length stitch, we're going to sew using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You can go ahead and finish your seam allowances by serging them if you have a serger. If not, go ahead and press this so that your seam allowance is up facing the yoke. And then you're going to grab one front and you're going to pull your gathering stitches to make sure that your shoulder fits onto your yoke. I'm going to pin at my notch first. Pull a little bit more just to make it fit. And we're going to stitch it down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And you're going to stitch your other shoulder to the other yoke the same way. Alrighty, the next thing we're going to do, once we have both our shoulders attached to our yoke, and you have pressed your seam allowances, we're going to attach our pockets to our sides. So I'm working on the back first, and you should align your notch and your 2 dots, and you're placing your pocket right sides facing, so the right side of the pocket is facing the right side of the fabric. And we're going to stitch it down using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then you're going to do the same thing to the other side of your back, which I have already done here. And then you're going to move to the front pieces, and you're going to do the same thing. Place your pocket right sides facing, align your notches, you're going to do the same thing to the other front until you have all 4 pockets attached. And now we're going to place our front to back at our side seams with right sides facing. Okay, we're going to pin our side seam. So front sides, right sides facing. Pin at the top and then match your notches. You're going to pin again at your pocket. And then you want to align your pocket, and we're going to pin the pocket together. And then you're going to continue pinning down your side seam until you get to that dot. I have a little mark here. And then starting at the top using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Back stitch at the beginning. We're going to sew until you get to that dot for the pocket. Back stitch, and then we're going to pivot and sew around our pocket. Back stitch. Then pivot and continue sewing down 5/8 of an inch seam allowance until you get to your dot. You're going to do the same thing to the other side seam. Okay, once you're done, I want you to go ahead and press your pocket towards the front, and then we're going to grab our bias binding to create our casing. So I've purchased some double fold bias, and and I opened it and pressed it. And now we're going to pin it along that line on the inside. You should have marked your placement line. So we're going to start with one side, and you're going to place the bottom of your casing along that line. So go along and continue to pin your casing until you reach the other front. Okay, as you can see, I have pinned my entire casing to my waist along that placement line, and now I'm going to stitch close to the edge, both on the top and then again on the bottom. Once you reach the end, just turn it around, and then you're going to do the same thing on the remaining end. Okay, we're going to work on our right placket. So you should have interfaced one side of your placket where it's shown on the pattern. And so once you do that, on the wrong side of course, you're going to fold it over along the fold line, and you're going to stitch close to the edge, and then at the top and at the bottom. Stitch across the bottom and stitch across the top. Now on the right side of this placket, you're going to take your buttonhole guide, which was a pattern piece. You did not cut out of fabric, it's just a guide. You're going to lay it over the top of this, and you're going to mark your buttonholes 3/8 of an inch away from the very top, and then 5/8 of an inch from the very bottom, and make a dot for every buttonhole along your placket. Okay, so using my buttonhole guide, I have made all of my markings for my buttons. Just like we did the buttons before, you're going to need to follow your own sewing machine's instructions, but once you have them all marked, go ahead and make each and every buttonhole on your placket. Okay, once you've done your buttonholes on your placket, go ahead and place it right sides facing over the right side of your front, because this is the right placket, and you're going to pin, making sure that you match your double notches. And we're going to stitch this down using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I want you to take this to your ironing table, and you're going to press it, making sure your seam allowance is facing your placket. Okay, once you have done all your buttonholes, go ahead and fold this over and press it along the fold line. So on your pattern piece you had fold lines, and I made little notches at the top just to make sure that I was folding at the right place. So go ahead and fold and press all the way down, and then we're going to stitch the very top of this, keeping the other side free. So we're stitching a 1/2 inch away from our pressed edge all the way down. Okay, we have our left placket, and so what we're going to do is we're going to start working on our left side. And so now we're going to do this a little different. So usually we do right sides facing. We're actually going to start by doing right side of facing to wrong side of the dress. So the right side of the facing, the right side of the fabric, is facing the wrong side of the dress, and we're going to pin. Align notches. And we're going to sew this down using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And you'll start to see it make sense once we get further along. now I want you to go ahead and press the seam allowance towards the placket. Okay, so now you're going to go ahead and press at your fold line. So this pattern piece had fold lines. So I have folded once and pressed it, and then you're going to fold again, and now we're working on the right side. So now it makes it actually a little easier to stitch down this placket without trying to catch it from underneath. So then once you fold once and press, you're going to fold again and press, and then we're going to stitch very close to this edge. Okay, once you have your placket finished, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our collar. So why don't you go ahead and grab your collar pieces, and I want you to grab your interfaced collar, and we're going to pin it to our neck. So you want to match up your notches, so you should have some notches in the back. So you want to pin there. And of course it's going to extend. Of course it's going to extend 3/8 of an inch. I want to go ahead and pin there. And then go ahead and match up your other notches and your dots. And then do the same thing on the other side. And pin. And we're going to stitch it down. So starting in the center, we're going to stitch using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then you're going to go back to the center, and you're going to go in the other direction. Now I want you to press your seam allowances up to towards your collar. Now go ahead and grab your remaining collar, and we're going to lay it over the top, right sides facing, of course. And go ahead and pin it. And we're going to stitch it using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, starting in the center and working towards one end. And then you're going to do the same thing, going from the center to the other end. Now go ahead and trim around the curve. And then you're going to turn this to the inside. And then you can go ahead and press this. And then go ahead and press under 3/8 of an inch and press that down, and you'll be able to slip stitch this closed, but we want to make sure that we press it and then press the edge again. I have gone ahead and pinned my collar down. If you don't want to hand stitch your collar, you can always pin it down the way you see me doing here. And then we're going to stitch really close to that edge. And I'm going to remove my pins as I get to them. Go ahead and cut any loose threads and give your collar a final press. Okay, so now we're going to work on our sleeve. So go ahead and grab your interface and non-interfaced tab pieces, and we're going to lay them right sides facing. And we're going to stitch all the way around. go ahead and trim. And then you're going to turn this to the outside and you're going to give it a good press. Once you have it pressed nice and flat, you're going to make a buttonhole where you have the buttonhole marking on your tab. And again, you're going to need to follow your sewing machine's instruction guide on how to make a buttonhole using your machine. So go ahead and give it a good press and make your buttonhole, and we'll continue with our sleeve. Okay, so on the wrong side of your sleeve, you should have a mark where you were placing your tab. So go ahead and place your tab at that mark, and we're going to stitch across. And now go ahead and create your basting stitches so that we can ease the sleeve cap in. Using the longest stitch possible on your sewing machine, we're going to create 2 rows of basting stitches. And then another row 1/4 inch away. Now you're going to go ahead and pull those gathering stitches, those basting stitches, just a little bit. You just want to add a little ease, take up some of that ease in the sleeve cap. And now with right sides facing, we're going to stitch the underarm seam. Now I want you to go ahead and you can finish off your raw edges, of course. Is you want to turn this over 4 inches and you're going to press it and create a 4-inch hem on your sleeve. So I'm going to go ahead and press this first, and then we're going to stitch really close to the edge all the way around. Okay, I have stitched my hem and I'm going to turn my sleeve to the outside, and I'm going to press my hem once and then twice at your ironing table, and then once you put your button in, you can go ahead and button it up. I'm just going to pin it for now, and then I want you to go ahead and grab your dress, and we're going to attach our sleeve to our dress. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, with my sleeve right side out and my dress right side out, I'm going to align my underarm seam lines first, and I'm going to pin once there, and then I'll just turn my dress to the outside so I can work from the outside. And I'm going to go ahead and pin at my notches first. You should have a double notch and a single notch. And then I always make a little notch in the center of my sleeve so that I know, at the sleeve cap, so that I know that that goes at my shoulder seam. In this case, we don't have a shoulder seam because we were using a yoke. So I am using the center of my shoulder, and I'm going to pin there. And then I'm going to continue pinning until I have my sleeve fully pinned. And if I need to pull my gathering stitches to make this fit, I can go ahead and do that and then distribute the gathers. We don't want any puckers. And now you're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around, making sure you don't get any puckers or any tucks. Now if you have a serger, you should be serging your seam allowances, cleaning them up as you go. I don't serge during the tutorials, just for the sake of the tutorial, so I can get through it rather quickly without boring you guys. But if you have a serger, you should always be finishing your seams so that the inside looks as nice as the outside does. Cut off any loose threads, and then you can go ahead and remove any of those gathering or basting stitches that you might see. I'm just going to go ahead and pull that out. And then go ahead and hand sew your button onto your dress. Make your buttonholes. Make sure you have your buttonholes on your plackets. And now what's left to do is the drawstring that's going to go inside of our casing and the hem of our dress. Okay, now we're going to sew our drawstring together. So with right sides facing, we're going to stitch these together first at one end. And then we're going to open it up and we're going to stitch 3/8 of an inch, leaving a 2-inch opening right in the center. So I'm going to start a little away from the center. And you're going to do the same thing in the other direction, making sure that you're leaving an opening. And then you're going to turn this out through that opening. Okay, once you've turned your drawstring right side out, you can go ahead and press it if you'd like. And then you're going to grab a safety pin. And you're going to close out the opening. Cut off any loose threads. And then using this safety pin, we're going to sift this through our casing. So you should have opened up your buttonholes. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your casing, your drawstring in through one buttonhole, and you're going to sift it all the way through your casing until you reach the other side. Okay, once you have your drawstring all the way through, you can try your dress on, you can pull it together, close your buttonholes, pull your gathering at the waist. And then the last thing to do is our hem. So I have already made a stitching line 5/8 of an inch away from the raw edge. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it to my ironing table and I am going to press 5/8 of an inch. That's where I made my stitching line. And I'm going to press all the way, just turning my stitching line to the inside, all the way around and at my curve. Then I'm going to turn under the remaining amount of that hem to meet my basting stitch, and that's how we're going to do our narrow hem all the way around. So go ahead and press that out. Okay, as you can see, I turned over my 5/8 of an inch along that stitching line, and then I turned again and pressed it, and now I'm going to sew very close to that edge. And you're going to continue until you've done the entire curved hem, and we're all done. I hope you've enjoyed these sew-alongs. Until next time, peace.